morning. Today is Tuesday, April 20th. For lunch today, there's Sloppy Joe on a bun with baked beans, or taco salad with tortilla chips, or spicy chicken patty on a bun with golden french fries. And today we are continuing with our second of 3 days of severe weather drills. During the drill, each class will visit their assigned area. Today's drills are the following homerooms: Mr. Fisher's class, Ms. Dudley's class, Mr. Kreider's class, Mr. Baumgart's class, Mr. Park's class, and Ms. Brooks's class. Today in grades 4 through 5, it's a B day. In grades 6 through 8, it's an A day. Today during gym recess, the Boys and Girls Club option is available for Ms. Beggs and Ms. Gaffney's classes. And still no birthdays today? We'll keep trying. Hey everybody! So I'm coming to you right now from Nauvoo, Illinois, because this is the place where the first members of the Black family and my family came over to America in 1840. As long as I'm down here, let me tell you their story. William and Jane Black were both born and raised in the city of Lisburn, Ireland. This city now sits in modern-day Northern Ireland. William served in the British Army for several years and later went into the clothing trade. When things got difficult with his business in 1835, William and Jane moved with their 3 sons and daughter to Manchester, England, which was a center of the clothing trade at the time. While living in Manchester, in 1839, both William and Jane joined a church that was based in America, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, often referred to as the Mormons. At this point, Jane and William separated for a couple of years. William was called to go on a mission to his native Ireland, whereas Jane had to manage first the sea voyage and then the overland voyage of her and her 4 children all the way from Manchester to Nauvoo, Illinois. Now, when Jane Black arrived in Nauvoo in 1840, it was a fairly small town still, about 4,000. However, it continued to grow to over 14,000, which at the time was one of the bigger cities in Illinois. Now, the brick buildings you see around me are ones that are still those original buildings that have been taken care of and restored so that people can have an idea of what life was like back then. If you visit Nauvoo today, you can get a bit of an idea of what life was like back in the 1840s. If you visit the printing office, you can see how newspapers were made back then. They're not doing any live tours during this COVID season, but if you were to visit the brickyard, they'll show you how they made the bricks that Nauvoo were made out of and give you your own commemorative sample to take home with you. If you visit the Wainwright and Blacksmith shop, they'll show you the process, how they put wheels on wagons and made horseshoes. Here's what one of the schools of that time looked like. Personally, I'll take what we've got. You could visit the Cultural Hall, where they held plays as well as other public meetings. Now, back when the tours were open, this was always my favorite place to go. Not only did they show you how to make bread, but they had sampled gingerbread cookies you could eat right there, and they gave you the recipe to take along with you. 10 out of 10, highly recommend. Now, in Nauvoo, when I look for places where my Grandma Jane would have worked, I have to look for homes like this, because she was a midwife. Now, back in the day, when you had children, you didn't go to a hospital, but rather a midwife or a doctor would come to your home. My Grandma Jane, over the course of her time in both Nauvoo and later on in Utah, delivered over 3,000 children without ever losing a mother or a child. Now, there were a few people who lived in Nauvoo that you may have heard of. One of them was Jonathan Browning, the first man to invent a repeating rifle, and he was a well-known gunsmith all throughout the West. Now, someone else who lived here in Nauvoo, who you may have heard of, is Brigham Young. BYU, or Brigham Young University, is where I graduated from. Brigham Young was the first governor of Utah. He was a major colonizer out west, and most people associate him with there instead of here. Now, the reason that Brigham Young became such a colonizer out west is that there was so much mob violence against members of the church who lived here in Nauvoo that they were driven out of here in 1846 and 1847. Now, in 1846, most of the people who could afford to leave Nauvoo did, and they went ahead and got on barges like this and crossed the Mississippi over to the other side on Iowa back there. However, there were about 1,000 people who still in September of 1847 couldn't have afforded to leave, or they were too sick, and my Grandma Jane and her family were one of those. She stayed back to help take care of people. So on the final day of this pushing people out, mob members were coming around and trying to collect people's guns and firearms. Somebody rode up to my Grandma Jane. She pulled a 6-shooter out of her dress and said, "Is this what you're looking for?" He said, "Yes, hand it over." She's like, "I'm serving notice that I intend to use this before I hand it over. You still want it?" Guy looked at her and said, "I guess not." With a few other choice words, he rode off. But I basically learned, don't mess with Grandma Jane. Now, the thing I really like about family history stories like this is not just that my Grandma Jane was somebody inspiring, who basically had tenacity, who had spunk, who got things done. But I know, because she was in my family, I've got those characteristics in me somewhere if I look for them. And so today's challenge is to think about somebody in your family history that inspires you, and try and be like that person today. Try and be like that person who's going to make a difference. All right, you take care.